We're looking at the weekly 30-30 trading list on the ASX. We're separating the 30 strongest momentum companies, and then we're also looking at those companies, the 30 best that are building their bases, possibly ready to run and fly. It's a bit difficult in this market when the market's consistently on the nose, but Gary Glover has sifted through the charts, identified the best momentum stocks, and also those that are coming up in the launch pad. Good afternoon, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. How you going?
Very grateful for you to make the time. Usually we record this on a Friday, but we'll be both out in the airport contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and the price of fuel on Friday. But you've worked through the charts and you've got GAL front and center once again. So has that come up number one, has it?
That was the number one on the list again, obviously. But yeah, obviously since then, obviously the last few days we've deteriorated there. So it's probably deteriorated a lot more since yesterday. Which just goes to show, that started to come off here now, and yeah, obviously it's obviously a pretty weak market here, so like a lot of stocks are sort of down. So yeah, you can see there that that gal there obviously had its nice little, had a little three-way pullback there, and then tried to rally there, and then yeah, then we've lost our way. Once it didn't, it should really be going to a new high in the same amount of time here. So I think, if you saw this sort of move here, you should have been tightening up here if you were looking at this sort of stock here. But just got to be careful, these momentum stocks here. That's sort of it's definitely a risky place to be at the moment. So that was then the other one. Now I thought looked interesting was Bubs there. Obviously had a little pullback there. We might have mentioned that previously, to sit back and wait for a little three-wave pullback, which has occurred now. Then been a bit volatile there, but yeah. So I still feel like maybe in the low 60s there, probably not bad. Yeah, could get a swing of sort of good news there. I see the first shipment's going into the US this week, I think. So yeah, but that doesn't look. That's not the worst looking chart here at the moment. So it's I think that's there's some reasonable volume coming in as well for the lows. So just probably at a market that's not in a hurry. So we don't need to be chasing breakouts. I think at the moment we just want to be sort of following momentum. The other one on the list there was AVR, which has sort of gone up to, we talked about maybe going up to retest the old high there, then pulling back under the high and then breaking through. So it's got a little bit of momentum there. It's sort of tough to sort of buy those in this current market here, but in a normal market, this would be, it's a little, what you might refer to as a little cup and handle there, Chris. Not pretty shallow one as well.
Cup and handle, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's pretty solid. So closing above that high there yesterday was probably a little bit of a trigger there. So for some there, people would have viewed as a little cup and handle. Closing above that previous move as well would be pretty positive. So a lot of people would have bought that move yesterday, and then using that the low of that day as their stop here. So if you're buying it, say 23.70, sort of near the close, and then if you're the low there's 22.84, so you might have say 22.70. So you might be risking $1 here, and then hopefully you're looking to make 3 or 4 or 5 times that and get going here. But you just got to keep it nice and tight here. So most people would, if they see that sort of trigger day, would have the stop there just around the low, or maybe just slightly under the low. But there, that's probably not the worst sort of trigger out there. I think Australian Ag's probably had a pretty decent move here. It's, I think we talked about this previously. I mean, there's that, if we think about the chart we've just shown there, here's the cup and handle in here. Nice little cup there, nice little handle.
And almost a cup and handle in a cup and handle, isn't it?
Yeah, and then it just sort of stayed nice and tight there, and then it finally sort of shot here. So, yeah, so sometimes they look like they're, at that stage probably look a bit extended here, but they can really kick on from those sort of moves. So this one's now looking a bit long in the tooth here now. So this is quite a vertical move, getting quite far away from the 50-day moving average as well. So pretty far away from the 10 and 20. So normally sort of like that 3 to 5 days up pretty aggressively. Might sort of see this cool off here, but yeah, another strong trend there. Polynovo is sort of one that we looked at previously there. It didn't really, once it sort of broke through, it didn't really get going there. But the only thing there, Chris, we haven't seen any volume as well. So we've seen some good volume on these up days. very light volume on the selling here. So pretty interesting, mate. Sometimes they do come back to the 50-day moving average and then they can go again. So be interesting to sort of see what happens here with the 50. But probably want to, this is a little bit of a false breakup here, which I don't like, but the volume analysis is pretty robust here. So just
what you're getting, the breakouts, the good strong days have solid volume, and the last 4 days on pullback have sort of drifted back with low volume. So it's not a mass exodus, it's just lack of follow through buying, is it?
Yeah, so you probably see that that's look, you might have been looking at a little starting position if you broke above this little swing high, but then really we're looking to close above that high as well, which it hasn't done. So actually look at, in terms of this being the real trigger, a lot of people will be looking at this, if I often refer to this as a little bit of a cheat, breaking the one of the lower highs. So actually, maybe breaking above here in the lower high, what you might call a little cheat. But then you're really looking to add to this basically once you break out above that previous swing high there. So I like to look at the bodies of the candles rather than the wicks and stuff there. So the body's sort of suggesting there above above 135 there. So close above 135 would have been pretty positive, but it hasn't done that. So it's come back into the range again. So we've got some positive signs there, some good volume there. Bit of a, pretty tight pullback, good volume again. But this might just be a little throwback here. So you just never know. It's so far pretty volume. So I'll be watching this one pretty closely here. If it sort of turns up again, some volume comes in, be one worth a look there. I just saw a few guys talking about biotech, healthcare in the US there as being one of the strongest sort of sectors at the moment. A lot of stocks sort of popping out of there on the US. So, but yeah, just be interesting to see. This is definitely one stock which is interesting here. But look, it is a tough market here. So, I expect things to take a little bit to get going here. This is one stock which should be coming up on our radar here actually, because look at that chart. So really nice and tight here. All the pullbacks are all shallow. Just continues to sort of climb here. So first time I've sort of seen this, but reasonably tight. So nothing, it's a bit of a slow mover. It's not really, wouldn't say it's sort of high momentum sort of mover there, but the trend's still pretty robust. So that one should be coming up considering the nature of the market. I think LIN, this is sort of one that I sort of highlighted to be careful with actually, just because I know we've had a bit of a pop here, quite small, then a bit of a pullback there, but then we had this sort of bounce, and then after a bit of a rally here, we saw some heavy selling come in near the high there. So up near the last high, we sort of saw some strong selling there. So it's just telling me this one will be a little cautious there. But again, it's sort of not for me. This is probably 5 cents or 10 cents sort of stock there. It's probably not the sort of stuff that I normally would sort of trade in. So
it's also at that critical level, isn't it? 10 cents, where the next tick up is 10.5 cents for a 5% tick.
Yeah, that's right. So, but that's again just sort of made it on our list there. And obviously you can see why it's on the list there. It's had a pretty nice move here, but I just don't like the fact that this move's going up on lighter volume and then hit a bit of a wall of volume. So that would actually have me a little bit concerned there. NHF was sort of one on the blue chips there, which was sort of positive. Again, I think this is just sort of up here. I think Medibank Private was up as well this week here. So just that sector's pretty buoyant there, but nothing really for the trader. One that did catch my eye actually was this BTI there, Chris. Just because sort of we got the hallmarks here of a like a VCP pattern there. So we've got a sort of correction here, another correction in there, obviously this correction getting smaller. So just sort of, prices sort of starting to sort of tighten up a little bit in here. So the thing to like here is too, we saw some good volume here on the pop. We saw some good volume again on this rally as well. And obviously we pulled back on pretty light volume, and then we saw some good volume here the last few days on this pop as well. So had a look at this company there, sort of
listed investment company, is it?
It is, yeah. It's actually in the sort of like it's like a sort of a hedge fund sort of guy. They invest in information technology, which is probably the riskiest sector in the market, particularly in a growth crunch. So that's probably, you know, not so good there. And I think they've got a sort of stake in SiteMinder and Striker. So they're not early, you know, early sort of stage investors. They usually invest in things before they go to list. So, but what I thought was pretty interesting there was that the market cap is 186 million. And in the last month, they've sold 2 assets for 138 mil cash. So, and they've still got all these strategic stakes and sort of stuff as well. So I think the NPAT's about $2. Obviously, they've got a few gains in there, so I think they'll probably have to pay a bit of tax next year, maybe 20-30 cents. So probably 170 after tax, and the stock's trading at 138 here. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. That's a fair discount to NTA. Although it's not in the best sector at the moment. A few runs on the board there. I know Sol Pats are on the register as well. So I thought, okay, interesting sort of company. Normally this would, you know, get me excited, but the sector that's the only downside, is that it's in the wrong sector for this market at the moment. But definitely some value there anyway. Yeah.
Going back to the GFC, if you remember, those who remember, the market was falling late 07, 08 and 09. The listed investment company space on the ASX was torn apart, and you could get a lot of them liquidated their portfolios. And like you're saying, this one's holding a lot of cash. You could buy a large cash portfolio for 40% below NTA. Which sounds like these guys are pretty close to, based on the sales they're talking about.
So yeah, I mean, sometimes you see those LICs sort of, they can get around 10% sometimes, and then you can get. I mean, I remember, I think sort of WAM and that were at one stage. Obviously, they were getting some pretty good runs on the board, so they were selling for 5 or 6% over NTA because everyone wanted to be.
Yeah, WAM got to about 15-20% at one stage.
So yeah, so everyone wanted to be. So the whole thing can kind of shift there based on momentum of the sector and obviously the momentum of the stock here. But these guys have got some interesting investments. Obviously, have done well. Got some good runs on the board. Some pretty good managers behind them. Just in the wrong sector for the moment. But you know, maybe that's about to swing or change soon. I'm not sure we're there yet. But yeah, it is interesting anyway. I like that sort of, you know, the price action is sort of somewhat encouraging.
It's good to see that at least. So, and you noted a VCP, so that's positive.
Yeah, the only other ones I saw on the list there was, I think, AR1. It's a pretty strong trend here, but now sort of tipped over, so that's sort of got me a little bit nervous, just because that's and this rally here is sort of on light volume as well, so that would have me cautious. I think car sales was on the list there, which is sort of quite amazing. Good volume off that last low, so maybe some signs of accumulation starting to come in sort of down the lower end here. Probably needs to do a bit more work here first. IRESS was another one on the list there as well. Again, some good volume coming in off the lows here. Probably want to see how it counters move there and then see if we come back here, but popping above the 50-day moving average is a good sign as well. So probably, you know, sometimes when you see these things pop like this on good volume, you want to sort of see how they, you know, how the counter trend goes. So you basically sort of want to see them cool off there and then hopefully not come back too much. So, you know, we talked about those cup and handles. The best cup and handles is when you get a pullback, but they stays nice and tight, doesn't come back, might only come back, say, you know, 40% of the range. So the tighter the range, the less further it comes back, the stronger it'll look. So it'll all be about looking at the counter move here and seeing how deep it comes. If they can hold up nice and tight and not move too far, then yeah, that'll be quite good. LCT was one that's pretty small here, probably too tiny for me. Just the volume did sort of catch my eye, but I probably wouldn't touch that one there. And what was the other one? D2I, I think that might have been D2. There we go. Again, probably just pretty boring trend here, just sort of holding up here. You know, relative strength versus the rest of the market is probably a reason to list there. So solid there, but not enthusiastic there. On the weekly ones there, wasn't again probably a bit of a tougher list there, Chris. There, but not too much in there. I mean, Hipages sort of was on the list there, so it's had a bit of a bounce. So it looks like a small move on the chart, but from a percentage point of view, it's probably a decent move. Just coming off the highs, there doesn't look too much there. So bit negative still. We want to see a bit more there. But the only encouraging thing there is we're definitely seeing some volume uptick there. So we're starting to see maybe some signs of early accumulation, but that can come in. You can start accumulating well before the low. So definitely one to sort of watch here, but still way early. You want to sort of start to see maybe, a higher low and start to break out there. IPX had a nice move again, some nice volume. Just a nice V-shaped move off the low. So it's sort of definitely some buying there. So again, we put that on the list and we see how it.
You want to see the counter move behavior.
Yeah, you want to see it sort of pull back and hold up there. So yeah, I mean, just look at that sort of. If you go back and look at that chart there, see they pop, then they can sort of sit here for a long time here. I mean, what's this? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then by the 4th month we're starting to move. So it can take a little while here. So you want to sort of see this congest a bit here and go here. So that's the key there, is you got to be patient here. So if you manage to have your stops in place here on all your on any long stuff and get a few shorts like me, you're probably sitting in a bit of cash. You just got to wait for the right setups to deploy it. So we don't want to be rushing in. But yeah, so seeing a few things pop here, which is good. So it gives us a list to sort of start building. Then we got to sort of start to see the right ingredients here as well. So this is one that's had a bit of a pop, probably a little too small for me, but definitely a nice little pop on good volume. SPN was a bit of a watch as well to see how, this had a nice pop here, but look how deep it's come back in the range. That's not so good. So this is sort of what this is not, we don't want to see this come back and we wanted to see a nice tight correction, congest in there and then pop through. So this is what you don't want to see. Okay, so
it's an example of the counter trend being too heavy, too much pullback and
retesting. So we got a nice rally there on good volume, so that would trigger your interest there, and breaking above the previous swing high as well. That's some good signs there. But then you got to wait for the counter. There's a thing here, you got to wait for this sort of these contraction patterns, the whole thing to sort of wind in there and have a look here. So this is sort of one that I wouldn't look at here, and probably again pretty small in price, but look at that volume so far on the bounce here. There's no volume, so light. This is not what reasonably sort of heavy in here. A bounce on light volume. That's not what you want to see. So it's just interesting sort of stuff there. You sort of just want to be sort of looking at what's going on here. There's a sort of Playside Studios on the list. I know this was on there. So it was actually one that I looked at going back a year or two. Actually, it was sort of met a lot of my high growth criteria. So it had a pretty phenomenal run. It's in a bit of a cool off mode now. So it's probably one that I'll watch again just because I think it's interesting company there. But these leaders, they always get ahead of themselves and then end up coming back. So 140 down to 50. So we probably had about a 70% correction. So sometimes they can come back about 80%. So can't rule out coming off more. I think what else was there was TEM, again, pretty small mover. The only interesting thing here was that had a really, fantastic run. It had a deep pullback there, but it took a long time. This is sort of juiced up, 2.5 months there. Yeah. So it's used up a lot of time here. So I just probably this is probably one just to keep an eye on there, but it's probably a little small for me, but definitely when it goes, there's some volume coming in and some price action getting going here. So it's not one that I'd exactly rule out, but I'll sort of watch it there. This is a stock that everyone loved last year at AXE, so everyone was hyped it up there. I think it's what's it? Yeah, it's all that IQ sort of so. Yeah, CI sort of stuff. So it's really, really cool off here. So this is the thing that happens. So sometimes these stocks can really cool off again. So this is sort of one to keep an eye on there. Just I think that sort of sector can come back into play again. But just got to be careful, trying to buy the dips on these things. That's why we want to basically sort of see a bit of a pop and then come back and then start to build something. So far, we've had none of that in there. Pointsbet is actually interesting. It's obviously, it's had a nice little pop here. Did just go over the 50-day moving average by a fraction, which is probably the first time for a while. It's been sitting well under the 50-day moving the whole time, but still haven't broken a swing high yet, Chris. If we look all the way down here, no swing high, 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 no swing high. Yeah. So until we see a change of character, so that's the only thing there. The volume that gets me interested. That gets put on my, there's no way we should be touching this here yet. So we need to see a couple of things there. We need to basically break a swing high. We need to see good volume, and then we need to sort of start to see it build, and then we want to see the counter trend dry up, and then ideally you want to see a little bit of a contraction there, so a bit of a base there. So Stanley Weinstein would sort of suggest this is still well and truly in stage 4. Definitely don't want to touch it. You want to start to see a base build and then go from there. So so also on the list next to Hipages as well is Airtasker, which I think is a pretty interesting business there. But again, the trend's pretty nasty as well. So the volume's starting to pick up, so it's starting to build here, but no signs of a turnaround here. Definitely definitely a stock that I'll watch here. I just sort of have a feeling this is a pretty good business there. Just maybe the business is trying to do too much in the current climate, doesn't really like these sort of stocks. But this is sort of one to watch here. But again, we want to see a change of character as well. We want to see a bit of a bounce, take a swing high out, start to see contraction on the pullback, start to see we want to see basically a new high, and then basically we want to see a second new high, basically, sort of before we sort of start to look at these things. So interesting company. Probably sort of these sort of companies I like to think are pretty interesting. Got reasonably good growth profiles. They're just under the pump at the moment because of the state of the market. But just got to wait our time here. So we want to see something like this. We want to sort of see it settle down, have a pop, settle down, pop. Maybe try and build something. Then maybe you might get a bit of a move there. Okay, this one sort of did have a move but then failed. But that's the type of thing we want. We want to sort of see something build like that first.
So is that when you're talking about Stan Weinstein, what you're highlighting there, is that sort of when it comes back into phase 1 and starts building that base? Is that what it looks like?
That's right, yeah. So once the downtrends, you generally go through a bit of a consolidation phase, and then you're breaking through, so breaking above, probably a swing high there. This day here would have been a bit of a trigger. But we got a bit of a move there, but then we failed here. So this might have got you long here, maybe somewhere down here, the starting position there. But then you might have left your stop basically. You might have got yourself up to maybe break even once it sort of got moving, because you want to sort of see if these things can get going. But this one here, it didn't really get going, started to fail here, even though it initially stayed pretty tight. But you don't know that at the time. We don't know. October, November, you didn't really know. That was still pretty late stage in the tech cycle. That was sort of could have held on for a bit longer and gone higher. But but that's the sort of thing you want to see, that sort of at least a bit of a base there, something building first before we even look at this. So hopefully some of these stocks here over the next couple of months, we might, maybe they go slightly lower, maybe they start to build a base here, but we want to start to sort of see bases here, build first. Do not want to be, we're just sort of shown, some of those companies are pretty strong growth profiles, pretty well-known stocks, but lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. There still hasn't, so there'll be plenty of punters who'll be probably trying to jump into these names because they know them, and there's some pretty decent brands, there's some pretty good businesses there, but share price is on the decline at the moment, so they're getting hit pretty hard here. So we just got to wait for a change of character, wait for a change, in the share price movement there, and then wait for that base, and then wait to build something. I think that's it, Chris. That's all covered there. So
that's a good lesson on the Stan Weinstein phase 4 moving back into phase 1. That's a good lesson to take in.
Yeah, I thought this was probably the most interesting chart, was the BTI, just because we've got a bit of a VCP pattern. we've got a bit of value there. Not the best sector. That's the only, we don't get the trifecta there, unfortunately. But I thought technically it looks pretty good, undervalued. Just not the right sector. Probably not the leading sector. It's probably the sector that's under the most amount of pressure at the moment.
That's a good caveat to put in there. The chart looks phenomenal. The peers aren't ranking too well at the moment.
Yeah. But it's a good sign, I guess, if you're in the worst sector and you're actually holding up quite well. That's the plus as well. So maybe once you're done, you might come out the other end. But yeah, it's just sort of puts a little bit of a caveat. That's why if you are going to play in these sort of things here in the wrong sector, in this sort of environment, Chris, I think your bet size should be a little smaller than normal, because obviously the market's in a pretty heavy downtrend, and a lot of the sectors under pressure there. So, unless you're getting the full caveat, all the signals all lining up here, you should be really betting. And if you feel compelled to trade here, just be trading pretty small currently until we sort of start to get some winners on the board and some momentum there and start really going.
They're definitely good insights to take in this market environment, especially as the market's been falling. And you've been on the right side of it. So probably a good point to plug that your Tuesday reports, you can click on the link over there to get those weekly updates from Gary and his report. And then also you can click to look at that volatility contraction pattern in a bit more detail. So on those points that you've raised, Gary, it's probably a good point to wrap it. And we won't be back next week. We're both a bit busy next week, but we'll be the week after. So thank you, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.